Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, June 16th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about garlic harvesting because 'tis the season. We're going to discuss if you have to follow the food safety guidelines and how to use the different types of lettuce. So let's do it. All right. Well, happy Monday, everyone. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. It was a relatively relaxing weekend here for Father's Day and all that good stuff. I got to go to a soccer match on Saturday with the kids and some friends, and mostly just hung out with the kiddos all weekend. It was great. Friday, I had the bright idea of trying to mulch a couple beds in this one Milpa-inspired plot that I've mentioned before, but haven't really gotten into depth on yet, where I have corn and beans and sunflowers and squash and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, I had the bright idea to mulch a couple of the beds with grass clippings from around the area where I was mowing, and that is just an absurd use of time and to rake and move all that mulch. My dream is to buy a grass collector for the mower, for our larger mower, so that I could use it as almost like a hay machine or at least like a compost ingredient, because right now most of the yard mowing that I do just gets wasted. It goes back into the yard, which I don't really care about my yard, so that's not a great use of it. And it feels like a missed opportunity with all that good nitrogenous material there. At least for the first couple of spring cuttings, if I could use some of that lush green grass that is low in weed seeds at the moment, in the spring, because nothing has even flowered yet. If I could use that for the garden, that would be rad and very worth it. Obviously, there is a baler for the BCS walk behind. I don't know if that's obvious or not, but there is a baler, like a small one that they make for the BCS walk behind tractor. And it makes these like really adorable little bales of hay that could be really useful for a garden because they're so small and easy to move. But the price tag on that thing is somewhat a little hard to justify. I think it's impossible to justify it. Rather, I like the idea of taking something I already do, which is mow, and adding some value to it by collecting some of that mulch with a implement that is at least a few $1,000s less, if not like $7,000 less. So yeah, a grass collector is slightly more reasonable. Oh, and while I'm just like kind of ranting about tools and implements and stuff, our dear friends over at the Organic Association of Kentucky are doing a mechanical weed control field day in September. I think it's September 23rd at the South Farm in Lexington, Kentucky. That will have a lot of hand tools and BCS implements that you can check out and play with in person. I'm assuming you can play with them. Let's just assume you can play with them. Anyway, I'm planning to be there, so check that out in the show notes. Also, just to note that whoever your local small ag organization is, they are probably having a bit of a tough time right now with the funding cuts. One easy way to help them out beyond attending some of these sorts of events that they're doing is to just simply become a member. So look up your local organic small ag organization or ask a farmer friend in your area and just become a member, or buy a ticket to something, or just donate to them. Their whole existence is based around providing farmers with a service like connecting them to other farmers or workshops on tools, etc., that farmers may not have the time or capacity or money to afford themselves. So please, show these small, important ag organizations some love, and that will trickle down to farmers. Awesome. Okay, so it is just about the time for many of us when the garlic crop will start to come out of the ground, or is it? How do you know? All right, so some of this will depend on where in the world you are located, and some of it will depend on the variety of garlic that you're growing or varieties. I have grown softneck varieties, for instance, that were ready slightly before my hardneck, and others actually that were ready a week or so after my hardneck garlics. Hardneck varieties just being the ones that flower and have the hard stem attached, and soft necks are the ones with a softer neck that notably you can tie together easily and make into a nice little wreath, which is cool. Anyway, readiness in garlic is relatively simple to determine and really the same for both types, both hardneck and softneck. All right, so to keep it simple, after about a third to a half of the leaves of your garlic have started to brown, you can start checking the bulbs. Pull a bulb or two and see if the cloves have started to clearly differentiate. If so, then you're good to go. You're good to harvest. If not, then you will have a little more time and they will continue to grow and mature, possibly substantially so, depending on the variety and the conditions. So to see if it's differentiated, you can just look from the top and you'll see the little bumps sort of where the cloves will start to form. Like this is pretty good, but it could probably go another week before it's ready, which you can tell because the leaves are not that brown. This process is also fairly forgiving too, so if you just have a small patch and are afraid you're going to ruin your garlic by pulling it a little early, you won't. If you do see the garlic is browning pretty good at the tops and happen to pull a few bulbs and it seems like it's a bit too early, like it's not fully, the cloves aren't differentiated, well, those bulbs will still cure fine. They may just not last as long or be as heavy as they would be if you'd left them in a little longer. So it's not a big loss or anything. You will still be able to eat the garlic or use them as seed or sell them or whatever. And I will discuss curing more in depth later this week, but that's pretty much it. Okay, so if you're watching on YouTube, just so it's clear, this is a garlic plant here, right? And you can see this leaf is about, I don't know, 30%, 40% brown. When each individual leaf gets down about 50% brown, that's when it's all ready to harvest. So there's a little bit of a mix in here. I'd say most of it is about 40 to 50%. You could pull it now, but that's getting pretty close. So that's when you would start checking it. It's really not super complicated to be honest. I mean, garlic is really forgiving. When your patch starts to brown about a third of the way, give a couple bulbs a check, see if the cloves are started to differentiate, and then go ahead and pull it. Now, if you wait too long, you can end up in a situation where the outer leaves are all rotted all the way down, which those outer leaves are directly tied to the paper around the garlic cloves. So you end up with kind of naked cloves that kind of the brown stuff sort of rots off, and then you get these like just naked cloves, and that may affect curing and storage negatively. So don't wait too long if you can help it. If the cloves seem separated, just go for it. If the forecast is calling for 10 days of rain, like ours has been lately, then I would also go ahead and harvest rather than risk rot or over maturity. Anyway, I hope that helps. And otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, do these food safety rules apply to you? BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTIL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member author MK England, who writes, quote, "Lettuce Master Jesse, I'd love an even deeper dive into lettuce categories, romaine, bib, gem, type, butter, etc., and their appeal/success in various types of markets, plus Food Safety Modernization Act/Produce Safety Rules and cut greens as TCS, which stands for Time and Temperature Control to Maintain Safety, and what's included in that: kale, chard, spinach, etc., not collards because of the rarely consumed raw exemption. But what about whole head lettuce? How you navigate all that, and so on. Just get real nerdy about it. Many thanks. This show has been a huge help as I scale from homestead to teeny tiny farm. Grateful for all you do." They write, asking generally, but additional context is helpful. FSMA exempt, entirely direct to consumer, mostly roadside farm stand with occasional market appearances, end quote. Okay, so thank you. Good questions here. This is really kind of two questions, or at least like two subjects: washing and packing lettuce in a way that follows the Food Safety Modernization Act, and two, the different types of lettuce and how to sell them, think about them, etc. Let's use this current segment that you're in, to just tackle the FSMA stuff, and then the next segment we can do the lettuce breakdown. Now, this may be boring stuff for some of you, but if you plan to sell produce like lettuce and cut greens and that sort of stuff, you have to follow and know your food safety stuff. That said, FSMA is relatively easy because, like MK here, most people listening to this are likely exempt, or what is called qualified exempt, from FSMA regulations. Of course, food safety is absolutely paramount always, so just being exempt doesn't mean ignoring food safety, but whether you have to follow these specific guidelines and protocols is determined mostly by your sales and what you are producing. FSMA is a program largely intended to prevent larger producers from sickening lots of people, as we saw with the listeria outbreaks back in 2011, where lots of people got sick and several people died. Not great. Now, small producers can absolutely sicken people also. So, like I said, food safety should be a huge focus of your work if you plan to sell things that people will eat raw, but we'll discuss who does not have to do the associated paperwork first, and then we'll tackle some of the TCS stuff that MK asked about. First, if you sell an average of $25,000 or less worth of vegetables in a 3-year period adjusted for inflation, if you do that annually, you are considered just straight up exempt, meaning you do not have to follow the FSMA guidelines. If you sell more than that, to be qualified exempt, you have to apply for it. But in order to qualify, your farm business has to meet 2 requirements. The farm must have food sales averaging less than $500,000 per year, again, adjusted for inflation, during the previous 3-year period. These sales include all food for humans and animals, not just fruits and vegetables. Then, 2, a farm with a qualified exemption must still meet some modified requirements, including disclosing the name and the complete business address of the farm where the produce was grown, either on the label of the produce or at the point of purchase. These farms are also required to keep certain records. And again, that is us. We are qualified exempt as a FSMA farm, and we have been basically since FSMA came around. Now, we still did have to go through FSMA training, even though we were qualified exempt. Honestly, even if you don't, for whatever reason, I recommend every farm business owner do it because there is some good systems in there that you could use on your farm. But also, if you endeavor to build a strong farm business, you should be following the procedures anyway, just to get in the rhythm of it. There are also exemptions for certain types of produce, such as produce that is rarely consumed raw, and they have a list on the FSMA website. I will post that link in the show notes. Produce for personal or on-farm consumption, and produce intended for commercial processing, i.e. cooking or cutting, which is covered by a different FSMA rule. So basically, if you are not exempt or qualified exempt, you may still be exempt. Lots of outs here. The list of foods not commonly consumed raw is interesting. Some, like dried beans, potatoes, and collards, make sense. You don't generally eat those raw. They can be eaten raw, but generally are not. But then there are things like figs, dill, and sweet corn on there that are a bit head-scratching. But still, most of them are not things like baby greens or lettuce, which are almost always consumed raw. When I was cooking, we had this term called the danger zone. Basically, you do not want your refrigerators to be running above 40 degrees because that is when foodborne pathogens can start to grow and proliferate. The same thing applies to lettuce and cut greens. The recommendations, they should be kept at between 38 and 41 degrees Fahrenheit or 3 to 5 degrees Celsius to avoid the risk of foodborne illness. To answer that part of that question, MK, basically maintain your refrigeration temperatures for stuff you cut, and especially if you also wash it. According to that regulation, it doesn't technically, I think, apply to head lettuces, but we still keep everything in that same temperature range, especially if there is any moisture on it. And MK asks how we navigate all of that. And in terms of the regulations, we are qualified exempt, like I said, so we just have to apply for that every year. And we take good harvest notes, keep a clean wash pack station and storage facility, maintain our refrigeration system and make sure it is staying in that 38 to 41 degree range. And for us, for right now, that's enough. And we could also easily scale up if we wanted to. Now, the other side of that, however, is that we are also not GAP certified, in case you were feeling that there just was not enough acronyms in today's episode. GAP, or GAP, stands for Good Agricultural Practices, and unlike FSMA, Food Safety Modernization Act, GAP is a volunteer program, like you have to sign up for it, but is sometimes required by some vendors, such as perhaps like Whole Foods. So even if you were exempt from FSMA, your client may request that you certify as GAP certified, which we can get into more another time. We are not GAP certified, though that is one, if we were selling to more stores and more outlets in general, is not a bad idea to have, especially in terms of liability, but also just demonstrate your dedication to food safety, which you should be dedicated to food safety. Anyway, let me know what other questions you all have about those, and maybe we can get an expert on here to really break it down, or maybe some larger scale farmers who have to deal with all these different regulations. Otherwise, let's take a quick break from that specific nerdiness before we get into the different types of lettuce nerdiness that MK asked about. BRB, or butter romaine bib. Yeah, be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, so our Patreon question of the day, if I will remind you, from author MK England, asks for a deeper dive into lettuce categories, romaine, bib, gym type, butter, etc., and their appeal/success in various types of markets. Okay, so awesome. First, romaine lettuces are somewhat of a specialty crop and are expected to be in relatively tightly packed heads. We sell most of that to restaurants, though we do sell a little bit individually as heads to retail operations, and we sold a lot in just big piles at the farmer's market. They tend to oxidize, romaines do, turn brown at the cuts, easier than other varieties. So selling pre-cut romaine, though I think there's definitely a market for that, is harder than selling pre-cut lettuce mix. Using some of the red varieties like Cherokee can help with that, just because it's not as visually obvious when you cut it and it oxidizes, but the hearts of Cherokee are still green and show that oxidation more. Cherokee is billed as a heat tolerant romaine, and it's better than others, I guess, for heat tolerance. But once I discovered Blue Rock, I have never looked back in terms of a summer romaine variety. Cherokee actually makes a killer fall and overwintered head, though. I really do love how it turns out in the late fall. Okay, bibs and butters. Bibs and butters I'm going to group together because they are both not very heat hardy lettuce types that really require the right conditions to come out well. What I mean is that these are very tender crops that with almost any environmental stress, bugs, soil splash, whatever, all that will show on the leaves pretty easily, making them harder to market. In a tunnel, or especially in a hydroponic situation, these are much more ideal to grow. Again, though, red crops don't just sell well, but also hide the damage well. So if you got a red version of these, it's a little easier to get away with having a robust ecological farm with lots of stuff running around and taking nibbles out of your lettuce. Another issue with the butters and the bibs is their tenderness, which makes them harder to stack high at market. Stacking high is an important part of keeping the lettuce cool and attracting customers. Remember, pile it high and kiss it goodbye is a very important farmer market adage. But the tender leaves tend to fall off easily on these types of lettuces and make them a little bit harder to handle in bulk without bagging them individually. One fun group of bibs to try are the small little gem varieties that can be great for chefs who want to do wedge style salads, or market customers who don't really need a ton of lettuce. And on most ecological farms, you will at least have a bug or two trying to figure out if they can eat what you're growing. Iceberg is an interesting lettuce style that you definitely do not see very often for its association with tasting like water. But there are a couple of varieties out there to try. They are pretty good and crunchy and grow well in the fall and early spring, at least here. Crispino, I think I'm saying that right. Crispino is one, and it's solid flavor-wise, makes a pretty almost cabbage-like head, but also, I should say, pretty heat sensitive. Another less discussed lettuce type are the leaf lettuces. Unlike head lettuces that make a, dense head, leaf styles are the types that make flat leaves perfect for like sandwiches or burgers or wraps or those sorts of things. Muir is my favorite workhorse in general for this sort of leaf type. Now, I will still sell them as heads, like grow them out as a head, but label it as leaf lettuce because it doesn't actually have a head. Oak leaf lettuces are another sort of leaf type and are the ones that are obviously, they have the oak-shaped leaves. That's thus the name. Unlike the flat broadleaf lettuces, oak leaf types are more commonly associated with salads. There are a few more, and a few like the Salanova lettuces that are a very unique specialty crop that is grown like a head, but intended for baby leaves, though there are good Salanovas that make heads as well. The seed patent Salanova has sucks, but they are truly the most consistent year-round lettuces we grow, not named Muir. So, I mean, it's a little give and take there, and it's very expensive lettuce seed. So you really kind of have to know what you're doing to go down that road. In fact, I would get good at growing cheaper lettuces before embarking on your Salanova journey. Anyway, I love lettuce and I'm happy to do more individualized breakdowns over time. So let me know what you all think and want to know. For now, though, let's call it a Monday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. I'm probably bobbing my head at the right tempo, who knows? Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of, what are we in? June, still. Almost July. I don't think that's a month. Should be. Anyway, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Tossman. Alicia Arzat, Veselaya Gardens, Cedric Reed, Bill Price, William Wiley Madro, which I started 20 years ago. I like that those rhyme. Dwight Yoder, Honey Works, Lynn Tompkins, Steve Hurlbut, Rebecca S., Mark Ravenel, Lee Shelley, Brian McCarthy, Larry Shepard, Martian Cindy, DP, Kat Brannigan, Little Row Farms, Hank Zecca, Ashley Sharp, Jill Crosby, Madison, Scott Roser, Norsk Guard Farm, Laura Britton, Alberto Diaz, Peter Broad, or Brood, not sure, Jason Ruel, Earthcare Farmer Jane Murner, Derek Page, Meredith Light from Granite Springs Farm, Grown Up Farm, Bob and Ann Patton of Hexhamshire Organics, Jared Kirst of Rivendell Farm, Steve Larson, Fiona and Donnie of Firefly Farm, and Jen Lawrence. All right, so today's story is about a diner, in fact, on the edge of this town in, let's say, Nova Scotia. Yeah, why not? And this diner is it's like a town fixture for its like weird, sometimes somewhat sad reputation. It's the hangout for the local high school kids. It's a late night haunt for like your bar hoppers. It's the parking lot most often used for exchanging kids between separated parents. But it's also a great place to meet singles over a slice of pie. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. And anyway, one morning around 6 a.m., a sign suddenly appeared on the door. Help wanted, must be unattached, minimal time travel required. Apply within. What's the job? Well, that is for tomorrow, if we get some more Patreon members, on Maritime. I think it should be called On Maritime, so it would be on Maritime. We'll roll with that. Thanks for watching and/or listening. We will see you tomorrow for Tuesday.